Welcome to the Write It Down podcast at Home Edition. I'm your host, Brooke Murata, bringing you one-on-one interviews to challenge, inspire, and encourage. This next guest is a very important guest. I met her at the Hayley Sue Foundation Legacy Ball a couple weekends ago. Her name is Hayley Wielgus. She is an anchor at WKRN in Nashville, Channel 2. So shout out to them. Crazy small world. When we were talking at the Legacy Ball a couple weekends ago, we were talking about WKRN. I said, oh, I have a friend that works there. His name's Chris O'Brien. She's like, what? I work with Chris O'Brien. Chris, shout out to Chris. He is a friend of mine here from Melbourne, Florida, and he moved to Nashville and now works at WKRN as well. So crazy small world, a little loop-de-loop. That's how God be. I love it. And so Hayley graciously decided to join us today, and I'm super excited to share her story with you. I could talk to her for hours. She's so intriguing. She's in just my line of work and just the things that bring us both excitement. So I'm excited for you guys. You know what to do. Sit back, relax, and get your pens ready because this is Write It Down.
Good.
Welcome back to the Write It Down podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Murata, on the mic with Hayley Wielgus. Hayley, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm thrilled to be here. I love when I'm not the one having to ask the questions. I just get to answer it. I love it.
I'm so excited because as we've chatted before, you're going to know how to answer the questions because you know how to be on the mic, and it's a totally different beast when you're talking to someone and then you hit record and it's like, so I'm super excited that you know how to be on the mic, be on camera. Your last name I thought was Wielgus, but it's Wielgus. The E is not there. What nationality is that? Do you even know?
Yes, my whole dad's side of the family is Polish, and there is some, I guess there's some debate whether it started as a German word like Wielgus, but it is a Polish last name, and pretty much anyone who has it, it's not very common. Pretty much anyone who has it is Polish, and you hear it a lot more. My parents are from Pittsburgh, but I did hear it a few times when I lived in Chicago, like Midwest. I'll find, a few, but it's pretty rare. I've seen a few variations of it.
It's not like Smith. Yeah.
No, it's not. And it's hard. No one can pronounce it. No one can spell it. No one can spell my first name or my middle name either. So that's just been my whole life, but I'm used to it. Doesn't bother me. Yeah.
Okay. It's funny though, because two things. One, when we met, I didn't know how to spell it. So when I looked at my phone for your name, I was like, the number didn't save, blah, 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 blah. And then I finally found it because it is spelled with an extra, maybe not an extra, maybe everybody else is spelled without, it's lesser than, but you have another Y in your name.
I do have another Y.
Yeah. I love it. When you met your husband, did you know how to pronounce the last name?
Of my husband's last name?
Yeah. Like when you met him, were you like, oh, hi. You know?
Well, we met I don't even know if I knew his last name when we met, but we met in a strange circumstance. I was interviewing for my job in Florida at the ABC station in Sarasota. I interviewed elsewhere as well, so I didn't know I was taking this job, but we met. I was just finishing up a 2-day interview, and the news director was like, just walk around the newsroom and, talk to people. Newsrooms are not like the most welcoming if you're not like working there because everybody's on deadline. So I'm like, oh, great. Just, walk around and talk to busy people. So I just kind of walking, and he had just gotten in for his like night shift. And so he had some extra time and we chatted. And then by the time I went back and the news director took me to the airport, I like walking in and I get a friend request from him on Facebook. And we stayed in touch. I didn't know if I was going to take the job or not and all this. And he went and talked me up to the news director. And
we'll keep him.
So I said, and I told my friends when I got back to my station in Texas, I was like, oh, I met the nightside reporter and he's real nice, just friendly. And they're looking at me like, I said, no, it's not like that. And they're like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a stagnant newsroom. Nothing to see here. Yeah, everybody's busy. But okay. So I guess, all right, you had some time to figure out his last name because I feel like I probably would have butchered it. But, we worked through those things. But Hayley, I'm super excited that you are joining us. We met at such a beautiful event, the Hayley Sue Foundation Legacy Ball. This year it was in Franklin, Tennessee. And you were connected to them last year as well. I went to that event. It was under different circumstances, crazy stories. See a different episode for that one. If you're
that was a very
crazy
story.
But long story short, we got connected this year, and I would love to chat with you. You are literally living the dream. You're in Nashville, Tennessee. You're on the camera every single day, living the life that you have always wanted. So tell us a little bit about that path into broadcast journalism and really making it into this amazing market.
Well, it's what I, for one reason or another, don't really know why. It's just what I've always wanted to do. I always wanted to be a writer. And a lot of people think of print journalists as writers, but broadcast journalists write every single day too. And I also loved public speaking growing up. I was in, competitions for that. So it was natural. Those two things combined would be a broadcast journalist. And I started doing when I was real little, like these little Fisher Price tape recorder with the microphone, doing little news reports, interviewing my mom and my sister. And, so I've literally been doing this since I was probably 4 years old, doing my little news reports. And I never changed my mind. I stuck with it. I was in the little elementary school newspaper. I was like the, lead reporter, stuck with it through middle school and high school. Knew that's what I wanted to major in college. I went to Texas A&M, which is not known for its journalism school at all, but that's where I wanted to go.
And their football's getting better.
Football,
yes. Getting better.
That's another podcast, which I'll be
it really is. It really is. Off the script. Yeah.
A&M 100%. Football is, I'm betting on our basketball team this year.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll see. But I knew I wanted to go to A&M. I had gone to swim camp there as a kid. I was a swimmer. It was like the only place I wanted to go. And while I was there, the journalism program was canceled. I don't know how to, it was closing. They were ending the major.
Okay.
So that's a whole nother story that I won't get into, but that did create a little bit of an interesting college experience when your major gets cut halfway through college. Yeah. But they did the best they could with like getting us the classes that we needed. I had an amazing internship. I also liked the public television station there, was able to take a class there. I really made the most of it. And then I went to and did an internship at CNN after I graduated in between before I went to grad school, which was at Northwestern University. Now that school is known for journalism. That's the Medill School of Journalism, which I'm biased, but is, the best or one of the best journalism schools in the country. So that I specifically went there for that and fell in love with Chicago while I was there, which was a side benefit.
It's such a beautiful city.
Amazing city.
Unreal.
Just, a wonderful place to be as a young person, learning more about journalism too, because there's just so much to cover there.
I feel like there's a station on every corner. I was like, oh my gosh, hey, Fox.
Yeah,
hey,
downtown.
NBC.
It's cool. Yeah. So graduated our program at the end with the master's program at Northwestern. You can choose different places to finish. And at the time, there's more options now, but there were a few. And I went to Washington, D.C. There's a newsroom there, and we were credentialed press on the Hill, just like every other news organization. So we covered, anything everybody else big leagues were covering. So that was very cool. So graduated from Northwestern, did a short stint at Bloomberg TV in Washington, D.C. And then I started my on-air career at KYTX, which is CBS 19 in Tyler, Texas, which is in East Texas. And beautiful part of the state. It was a rough transition moving from, you were living in Chicago and then DC and then going to a small town, but I absolutely ended up loving that place. Aww. And I learned so much in my first job. Crazy stories, lots of work, crazy shifts, not much sleep, basically just working your butt off all the time and making great friends in the process. So that's when we go back to where I said I was interviewing for my job in Florida. So after I had been in Texas for 3 years, started looking into new opportunities. And the funny thing is, my agent asked me, where do you want to go or where do you not want to go? And in my head, I was like, I really don't want to go to Florida. But I didn't say that. I grew up in Houston. Yeah, well, I grew up in Houston. I was kind of over the humid tropical climate.
Send me to Toronto
all the time. Yeah. And
I want to have a
blizzard.
In
Chicago
yes,
and yes. I don't know. I just was like, Florida is not at the top of my list. But again, I didn't say that. And the two offers that I got and considered were both in Florida, one in Sarasota, one in Jacksonville. And I took the one in Sarasota.
Okay.
So, and that's again where I met my husband. So had I not taken that chance and just said, hey, I'll go to Florida. It's a good opportunity. And, life would have been really different. So I'm glad I did. Yeah. Yes. So then I was there for 6.5 years. And
Oh,
again,
wow.
it's just time for a change, and started looking again. And there was no there was no place we specifically wanted to go. We were just looking. My husband we had both worked in TV for a long time. He had gotten out and done some sports marketing while he was in Florida. And that job was wrapping up. It was for the World Rowing Championships. And
Oh, wow.
that was one of those jobs that it was going to end when the championships were over. So we knew it would be a good time for us to move on. So I was looking everywhere. And then my agent said, well, there is this opening. And I started to just I had applied for a lot of jobs. I had interviewed for a lot of jobs. And I just started to have this good feeling about the job here. So came out for the interview. It was, a great place. It was a very happening city, great people at the station, a really good opportunity. And I'm still here now, 5.5 years later.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is where I had my 2 kids. So it's, a special place now.
Special place.
Yeah. Yeah. So I obviously do not partake in as much of the partying as most people being,
Yeah.
a mom
You're like,
now, but
RIP to my fun Broadway days.
yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, I still do. I'll
priorities.
go out with my girlfriends, like,
Yes.
moms can party too.
Yeah.
But it's much more rare and very like we have to plan it like 2 months in advance.
Yes.
Okay. When's your time? Yeah.
And last stop, 11 o'clock. I got kids. I got to pump. It's just it's a totally different vibe.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you learned early in your career as far as body language, just being on air, being on camera? It's a totally different field than being on a radio show. Like once that camera's on, people are watching, you got a nose itch, there's certain things. So what are some of the things that you learned early on in your career that have just stuck with you now being in Nashville at WKRN?
Well, the one thing I always remember is back to that internship that I mentioned when I was in college, which was at the CBS affiliate in Bryan College Station. And someone asked one of the anchors, how do you get your anchor voice? And she was like, what do you mean? And she said, well, you all have these voices when you're on air. And she said, it just starts developing over time. Like, don't try to have an anchor voice. And I had been told that, as I went on to grad school later too, like, we're not going to sit here and tell you how to talk, how to move your hands, none of that is taught in school. This is only thing that is taught is journalism. I mean, we did do practice live shots and we did a show in, there's 2 PBS affiliates in Chicago. And so for the smaller one, we did a show where we anchored and reported and, we got practice at all this, but none of our, faculty, they were not there like, here's how to put your hands, here's how to do that. They would give us little tips here and there, but it's really like you need to develop your own persona on air.
Right.
And
don't copy somebody else just because you think it's effective. Like it's going to seem phony on you.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of viewers who have, been a viewer for a long time, watched the newscasts I anchor for a long time, have said like, they'll watch my Facebook lives and they're like, you're the same. I mean, of course, I'm going to be a little more serious on air because the stories are serious, but they're like, you're the same as you are. You are what what you see is what you get, which is true.
Right.
Like, I don't have some.
It's not acting.
Persona. No, it's not acting. Yeah. I'm sure there are maybe people who do kind of change how they do things. I mean, I do think my voice is probably like some people have said, your voice sounds different. I said, well, yes, because you don't want to sound too you want to be conversational on air, but not to where you're not projecting. I did get a lot of
kind of to the point.
Yeah. And you want to be a little stronger in your voice. And, when I was first applying for jobs, I did get a lot of complaints about my voice. So that was something that I felt like I had to work on a little bit.
It's like so crazy because obviously like you sound so like good and polished to me, but it was funny because somebody gave me some feedback like on my podcast and they're like, your voice kind of sounds whiny and groggy. So like the next day I started talking and I was like, hello. Like, I just was like talking to my family, like, and they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, I just don't want to sound whiny or groggy.
Oh gosh.
But it's funny because you like, also a lot of people don't like hearing themselves recorded.
I do not.
And now I'm just like, I'll just take your word for it. If I'm whiny and groggy, I'll work on it because I'm not going to listen back to my voice because I'm going to just like like nitpick the whole entire
Yeah.
thing.
And
So
I think it's helpful to watch it back, and I do, but not like every day. That's like
yeah, like
destructive.
there's a balance
Yeah,
between like
right,
growing, but then being self-critical.
right.
And I can imagine in the industry it creates a chasm for being self-critical and kind of being self-deprecating and all the things of
Yeah.
like insecurities. We're going to take a quick break to discuss Write It Down's brand new website. You can head over to widpod.com, widpod.com, and see all the goods. You'll notice a banner at the top of the page that says Learn More. If you click that link, it'll show you how you can support Write It Down. P.S. My favorite part about the website is the Wid Wall, which is a collection of all the Write It Downs from the show. This podcast is made possible by the 1513 Network, so show the network some love and support by listening to their other shows. If not, just stick with Write It Down, because I'm the coolest, the realest, the illest. Now, back to the show. Have you ever felt the need to compete with somebody to get a job, or to maybe just not even compete to get a job, but just created your own competition in your head towards somebody else in the industry?
No, I've never looked at anybody as someone I wanted to get ahead or to get that job or to, no, not at all. Not even for 1 second.
Yeah,
Like any place I've ever worked has been collaboration, a team effort, happy for everyone's success. I've never even, it's not like I've looked at another market and been like, I want her job or something. Never, ever.
Right.
And I have seen people in other markets who I say, I really like what she's doing. And I like, male men as well. He or
I
she.
admire their approach.
Yeah, I admire how they approach. I like how they're conversational. I like the things they're involved in outside of work. There are things like that of people who I've really, followed, but it's not because I'm trying to compete with them. I was a competitive person in sports, but I probably could be a little more competitive, but it's just not, I don't know, that part of me has kind of died down at this point.
I think that just comes with like wisdom and maturity.
Yeah.
And just like, and I don't want to say like a new like direction or a different, like a change in aspiration. I just think it's, again, it comes from like kind of cooling your jets a bit to be like, all right, there's space for all of us here. There's growth opportunities. I can learn something from you and you can learn something from me. And it's kind of keeping that humility, because we are in a vain industry where people are watching and you have to look a certain way and sound a certain way. And it's funny because I was watching the Oscars the other night, and I was watching some of the interviews on the red carpet, and I'm like, oh, these are horrible. Like, I'm like criticizing, and not that I could do any better. I'm just like sitting there and I was like listening to myself. I was like, Brooke, give them a break. Like, they're literally on live TV with A-list celebrities. But I'm like, why would, like, there was this one guy that said, like Kate Hudson, you know what it's like to win an Oscar? And she's like, I've never won an Oscar. And I was like, like, but like I'm watching it in a different perspective, because it's like, that's a field that I admire and, all the things. So I love that you are so humble and you're driven, and like you are competitive, probably in the sense of like, you want to be competitive against yourself and you want to be better, but not in the sense of putting anybody else down so that you can get ahead. Like, not using somebody else as a step stool to get to where you ultimately want to be, because that all ends up coming out in the wash anyways. So, and there's plenty of space to be shared. So I really, really admire you with that. So tell us a little bit about family life, kids. How has that changed in your career and just kind of the direction you want to go in life?
Well, it definitely changes everything. I still feel, a lot of people would say, like, do you feel like a different person? I don't feel like a different person since I've had kids, but it changes your schedule. It changes your priorities. It changes, just how you operate with your home life and your marriage and your job. It just changes everything. And I have a daughter who is almost 3 at the end of April. She'll be 3. Her name is Brighton. And then my younger daughter's name is Jordan, and she is 6 months old. She was born this past August, 7 weeks early. So we did have, NICU stay, and that was a very different experience when after having my first daughter who was born after her due date, and then one who was born early. They just had to do things completely different.
They're just going to have different personalities.
They are.
And
They
you're
are.
gonna, parent them differently and relate to them differently.
Definitely. I can already tell. I mean, they just, I think my first daughter is like full force Energizer Bunny. Second daughter, she's definitely energetic, but she has a little bit more of like a chill demeanor. So I do think they're going to be a little different.
So that's your younger daughter. That's more chill.
My younger daughter. Yeah.
She's been through a lot.
She has. And you would never know though. She's the happiest baby.
Aww.
Like literally never stops smiling. So cheery. The only time she ever gets fussy is when she's tired, which I can relate. Like
it's fine. Yes. I get that way when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I become mute. I have a lot of words, but when I'm hungry, I'm like you can't crack me.
Don't talk to me.
Don't talk to me. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Hangry.
Yes.
But yeah, so it has definitely changed. Every bit of your time now outside of work is just, spent with your family and trying to figure out like, how do I get all of these kids fed? And, my older daughter, like we're starting swim lessons, like thinking about activities with her, thinking about preschool. So you're doing that. But then at the same end, you're like on a completely different life stage with the second, with still breastfeeding and pumping and thinking about her babysitting situation. I mean, it's just, it's constant.
It's different. Yeah. You're having to
really
think
different
of other people.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, I don't know how you moms do it. Like I'm in a selfish season of life now where I'm just doing my thing.
And I try to tell everybody who hasn't had kids yet, like do everything you want to do. And I did. I mean, I moved across the country. I traveled a lot. I, went out with friends. We went on
trips. Seized every opportunity.
Yes. And I had kids later. And, that comes with its own issues. But that was, I spent a lot of time in my my 20s and then early 30s, just my husband and I went on tons of trips, spent a lot of time. We dated for a while. We were married for several years before we had kids, so we got, a lot of that. I mean, we miss it for sure, but we're lucky that we had that time, and we know we'll have it again when the girls get busy and they're like, we have our own thing to do. We'll be able to go out more. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, your priorities change because your kids just become your number one priority above anything else in the world. And, your job is of course very important, but your number one thing is those kids. And that's,
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think if anything, COVID taught us how important it is to really relish our time with our friends and our family. And it also showed us that life and the show, for lack of better words, goes on. And, a lot of companies learned what it was like to be remote. Zoom really stepped up its game. There's just a lot of things that shifted in that season that I think there were horrible things that happened in that season for our world, but there was a lot of good that came out of it. And I love that perspective of just like, I'm still full force, like on my path and prioritizing like my career and the doors that God's opened. But I also have these blessings that like, I'm their mom. I'm their only mom. Like this is such a gift. And like, time flies like with the little ones, like before you know it, like I'm like crying because my nephew's about to go into kindergarten. It's not even my kid, but they're like the light of my life. And so they bring just a level of joy that you can't get anywhere else. So I totally,
I was thinking about this last night. I was like, the experience of having children is an unmatched human experience. There are so many great ones, but this is just like, it's hard to compare it. Yeah. And even if it's, like you said, even your nieces and nephews, just, these young, babies, kids, toddlers, preschoolers, they just, it's something that's just unmatched. And you have to soak up, like you said, the time goes by so fast, and all your, effort and time and love has to go to that, especially when they're young, because those are the most formative years of their life.
Yeah, they're like sponges.
Everything into it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's like, literally, it's such a blessing. I always say this about babies is they are fresh from heaven. Like they're the closest thing. Yes. And they smell, the way they like smile, the innocence. And if you could just bottle that up and unleash that on our world, like, oh my gosh, what a better place it would be. So I'm so on board with cultivating those precious relationships. You can learn a lot from kids. It's hard to, again, I'm not a mom, but like if I feel this way about my nieces and nephews, I can't even imagine my own kids, but the amount of love that you can have, you know, for another human is like, it's kind of scary, but in a great way.
It's mind blowing. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And it did, like both my daughters, when they were born, it literally did feel like they were just like angels from heaven. It really does feel that way. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
Well, speaking of angels and angels from heaven, you've been connected to the Hayley Sue Foundation for a couple years now. So tell us a little bit before we wrap up the show, how you got involved with the Hayley Sue Foundation and how it's impacted you.
I did a story with Hayley Sue's mom when they were having, it may have been their first fundraiser or one of their first for the foundation. They were holding it at Kendra Scott, and we were doing a preview story because, of course, we had covered Hayley Sue's tragic accident and, you know, services afterwards, and the community coming together, and what Lipscomb University did. You know, we did a lot of coverage of everything that happened. So this was a follow-up story to that and previewing their fundraiser. And I interviewed her mom via Zoom because it was still COVID at the time, precautions. So I got to hear a lot more about Hayley Sue and all the amazing things that she did and the legacy that she left behind. And we just really connected, and they asked me to MC their very first legacy ball. And then I did again this year. And I've just always kept up with everything they're doing throughout the year and how they've grown. And they have a wonderful mission, and they are the nicest people, everyone involved, their family, the board members. Yeah. They're all so resilient and positive, and I do not know how they do it. And they said that this is how they're getting through something that is so unimaginable, so horrific, tragic, is to put their energy. Well, first of all, they have 2 other kids, so of course, they need to be strong for them. But, putting a lot of their energy into bettering the community and helping other people who Hayley Sue would have liked to see, flourish in life and scholarships. So it's just, their mission is incredible. And I love being involved with organizations when the people are great people. That's when you know that
through and through.
That's worthy.
Like,
they're worthy of your,
from the check-in table to the servers to the DJ to you emceeing, like through and through that entire legacy ball, and not just the ball, but like everybody involved in the foundation throughout the year. Is just everything they do just transcends what's happening here on Earth. And it really is a true legacy of Hayley Sue. And I'm so glad that we got to connect. It was crazy. We had like some small world connections where one of my friends works alongside of you, Chris O'Brien. Shout out to you.
And he asked about you the other day. He said, I saw you met my friend. Yes. So
oh my gosh.
Small world.
Very small world. I was like, oh yeah, I have a friend that works at WKRN. You're like, that's where I work. And it was just so cool. So I'm super grateful that you came on the Write It Down podcast. I do have a couple rapid fire questions. Okay. We'll end with our Write It Down. First rapid fire question is, would you rather do martinis and caviar or margarita and chips and salsa?
Oh gosh, I'm going to have to say margarita and chips and salsa, being a
chips and margs girl,
Texas girl and a Tex-Mex lover. Yeah.
Yes. For sure. Yes. And you know who has really good ones? Slight plug. Okay. I'm not getting paid for this, but it's Miranda Lambert's in Nashville.
The
Pasta Rosa or whatever.
Pasta Rosa. Yeah. I haven't been there yet.
You got to go. Great chips and salsa and margs.
Where I mentioned where I worked my first market. And she's from the area, that East Texas area. And so I used to interview her when she would come back for her fundraiser. Yeah.
Oh
for
my gosh.
Rescue animals. Yes.
Amazing.
So isn't that cool? Yeah.
Well, you guys should have some chips and margs at her restaurant.
She has no idea who I am, but if we ever run into each
other. She will once you're at her restaurant. Okay. Next one, full body massage or just a classic pedicure?
Full body massage. Yes. Love a pedicure, but massage, there is nothing
like a massage. I don't know. I get like, I'm just so like close to them emotionally. I'm like, thank you so much for doing that for me. Would you rather drive or be a passenger?
Ooh, that's hard. Probably be a passenger so I can read. Although ever since pregnancy, I felt like reading has it's made me a little more car sick than it ever used to. I don't know what that. Yeah. But I love to get caught up on reading. That's why I loved when I lived in those larger cities. I could read on the train. Yeah. I miss that.
Okay. Classic. Okay. Watch the Oscars or Grammys? What are you more interested in?
I would say, I would have said Oscars, but now I say Grammys. I'd rather hear the music. And I just don't ever see movies anymore. So it's like I'm out of the loop if I watch the Oscars.
Yeah. Like that's
Grammys.
the thing too, is when we were watching the Oscars the other night, like there's a ton of movies I never heard of. And it was the same 4 movies being nominated for something. I'm like, where did this come from? Okay. A little more controversial, but my last one, Yeti or a Stanley Cup?
I don't have either.
Okay.
I have Corksicle. Is that
okay? I do like corksicles are cute.
Yeah,
they're very cute, and they're
I have
like,
not
honestly
jumped onto either trend.
Okay,
I'm not a big trend person,
and you don't have to be. You are in a safe place, but a corksicle needs to be an awakened trend because I do think they kind of slid under the radar and didn't get enough limelight because they are classic.
And I like some of their designs. They come out with like these collabs with different designers and stuff, and this is really cute. Whereas like some of the Stanley, I'm like,
they're clunky.
Yeah,
corsicles are a little sleek.
Yeah,
very sophisticated.
That's why I
like. I'm a mom, but I'm fun.
Yeah,
I have a corksicle.
Totally. I have a little corksicle that one of my best friends got me. That's a little wine tumbler.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that. Love wine on the go. Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? Well,
Hayley, we were at that point of the show where I ask each guest to give the audience something to write down. So Hayley Wielgus, what is your write it down?
Mine is, I didn't come this far to only come this far. And I think that's what I always, when I've had hard points in my career and I have to look back and think, I've gone through all of this. I'm not quitting now. Like, you've gone through all that. You didn't come this far to only come this far.
I love that. Write it down, Hayley Wielgus. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was so great to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Write It Down podcast. This podcast is a part of the 1513 network. You can catch a variety of shows on their website, 1513.com. If you enjoy listening to Write It Down, please subscribe, share with your friends, and if there's any ink left in your pen, write a review. For more content, follow the fun on Instagram by following at WIDPOD. That spells WIDPod. It's super cool. Stands for Write It Down Podcast, but it's abbreviated to WIDPod. Anyways, thanks for listening, and we will catch you later.